Welcome to Soul Wellness with Kristen, where we get into the nitty-gritty of various holistic modalities and explore exactly how they help you heal. I'm your host, Kristen, and I invite you to join me on this enlightening expedition where we explore the connection between mind, body, and spirit. In each episode, we'll talk in depth with holistic providers, medical professionals, therapists, and healers. Our goal is to empower you with knowledge, inspire you with stories of resilience, and provide practical tools that you can integrate into your daily life. So, find a comfortable space and join us as we explore the multifaceted world of holistic wellness. Get ready to learn how to improve every aspect of your life and simply feel good. The adventure begins now. Thank you for joining us. Today I have Kelly Mahoney with me, and she is with Dynamic Massage. She has been on this podcast before, but today we're going to talk about one of her very unique modalities that she incorporates into her practice called Visceral Manipulation. So welcome, Kelly.
Hi, Kristen. Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to be here and talking about this visceral manipulation. I know you've always been curious about it, and we've had quite a few conversations, so it's great to be here.
I know, and I've experienced this, so I want to know exactly what you're doing when you're actually doing it, because I'm going to be honest, you are unlike any massage therapist I have ever experienced, and that's a good thing because you're amazing at what you do, and I always find it fascinating that you can apply pressure in one area of my body and then it will relieve a whole different part of my body that's tense. It's like, you know what's connected.
I do my best. It's important, right, to understand the different layers of health and all the relationships from whether it's between fascia and muscles and bones and our organs, as we're going to learn today, and how all of that is so reliant on how everything else works in order to be working well itself.
Mm-hmm. So visceral manipulation is really about your organs, right?
Correct.
Everything in the torso.
It's broken down. I do visceral manipulation in the abdomen, but there's also visceral manipulation for the thoracic cavity, the chest, as well as the pelvic cavity.
Okay.
Yeah. So visceral manipulation, the proper explanation of it is organ-specific fascial mobilization. Now, to break that down, it's talking about assessing, treating, and trying to improve the function of your organs, their membranes, and the connective tissue associated with those organs.
Well, it's a very unique feeling, too. I'll leave it at that. It's a unique feeling. Sometimes it's not necessarily comfortable because you're pushing down into the abdomen, sort of on the edges of the cavity, and tell me what you're feeling for.
Right. So it can be uncomfortable if there's a restriction somewhere, but for the most part, it's a manual therapy. It's not energy work, but it's a manual therapy, more of a light touch, kind of like how craniosacral therapy is. But it can be uncomfortable, as you mentioned, because I'm just gently sinking my hand down into the abdomen. I'm going organ by organ, so to speak, right?
Okay.
So if I'm at your stomach, I just gently sink my hand down into the stomach. I'm just going to come up a little bit, and it's not a lot of pressure. I just want to sink my hand down enough to know your stomach is right below my hand for the most part. And then I'm just going to let my hand stay there, and I'm assessing and taking note of what direction your stomach is moving in. Because even if we're laying completely still, our organs are still designed ideally to be moving in very specific directions for that organ. So I'm trying to get a feel and assessing what direction is the organ moving in, and is there a direction it should be, but maybe it's not, or maybe it's moving more in one direction and not so much in another. And then from there, I'm branching out and thinking, well, if it's pulling more to one side, what potentially is over there? What ligament or connective tissue attaches to that organ on that side that maybe is restricted or pulling, or where else does that connective tissue or ligament or tendon anchor to that maybe where it's anchored to is restricted and we're causing this pull.
So when people come to see you and they tell you that they're having certain issues, you already know in your mind what organs you need to be feeling for, what movement or non-movement you're feeling for. Is that correct?
For the most part, yes. I don't completely rule out other factors, of course. So tension or issues on the right side of the neck and the right shoulder, that could be connective tissue or superficial fascia right there. It could be muscles. It could be stress. It could also be your liver potentially. So I'm going through a checklist in my mind of all the different variables that could be contributing to what a client's chief complaint is. And then we're just going to go through that checklist during the treatment to rule out what is or is not contributing to it. And then that's where I sometimes will pull in visceral manipulation work, because if it doesn't seem like your basic run-of-the-mill reason, then let's see what's going on with the organs that are potentially associated with that area that you're noticing.
Wow. That is so interesting. Well, this helps me understand now what you're doing, because I see you once a month, and I swear it's just amazing what you do. It's a whole different ball game with you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Massage is totally different with you.
I do my best, and I never go into a treatment assuming I know the reason or have all the answers, because I don't, right? Every person's body and health and their systems, they have the answers, right? A person's body has the answers. I can't assume I know the answers, but it is my responsibility to go through what I'm trained in and then to try and rule out contributing factors, and then to try and, again, that holistic concept. Mm-hmm. I don't mean it as an all natural, which of course, as you know, I love, but holistic from the view of look at all factors that get the body moving or help the body feel well or not well.
Yes, because I would imagine this is very helpful for someone experiencing chronic pain, because in a normal massage, you're going to just get relaxed and someone's going to rub all over your body and try to loosen your muscles, but they might not be going to the root cause of maybe something is restricted in your organs.
Right, exactly, for sure.
It reminds me of myofascial release, but it's myofascial release for the organ system.
Yeah,
is that
similar? You're along the correct line, absolutely, because
Okay.
It's not just the organs. The organs have what's called visceral peritoneum, which is their own connective tissue around them.
So it's like their own fascia, kind of.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
holding them
Yeah.
in place.
Yep.
And that's what you're feeling for restrictions and movement and non-movement.
Correct, as well as different tendons, because there are tendons that come off of certain organs that obviously travel elsewhere and attach to other areas of the body. So you have your liver, which is on your right side, lower ribs. Then you have your stomach, which is on your left side, lower ribs. Between those two organs, between the liver and the stomach, is what's called the lesser omentum. And that lesser omentum can get restricted, and then therefore either the stomach or the liver or both potentially aren't moving as well as they could. And that lesser omentum is actually part of our immune system. So now think about people with gut health issues. Maybe something's just restricted. You don't necessarily need medication, which would be awesome. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just something in the abdomen is restricted, so it can't work properly.
That was going to be my next question, is symptom-wise, tell me some of the symptoms people might be experiencing that could just be a problem with the physical structure around the organs.
So one example I can give you is a client that I see not often. Basically, a client, I'll see him when something hurts. Mm-hmm. So it's a couple times a year. So I saw him last year. He came and he said, oh, my ribs on my right side are killing me. I have no idea why. You know, I'm stretching, I'm working out, I'm eating pretty healthy. I think I'm hydrated enough, can't figure out. But at the same time, he sits at a desk all day, long hours, stress. So we go through massage, right, and try and figure out, are there any muscles that are tight? Nothing really jumps out that is alarming. So then I go to the ribs, and then I actually did some visceral manipulation work at the liver. And as soon as I took my hands off of him after I worked on the liver, he took a big deep breath and he said, oh my gosh, my ribs already feel so much better.
Wow.
Because that liver, your liver is basically right underneath your ribs there in the front of your abdomen. So then whether it's connective tissue on the inside surface of the ribs that's restricting the liver or vice versa, you needed to get a little more freedom and mobility in that space.
That's incredible. So then he was fine at that point.
Oh, yeah. He got up and it was as if his ribs hadn't been bothering him for weeks.
So tell me, how does this connective tissue, so to speak, get restricted? How is this happening?
That's not a simple answer,
Okay.
right? Because just like muscle tension, honestly, it could be any of 500 different reasons, technically,
Okay.
right? Stress is actually the number one reason for why our organs stop moving in the proper direction.
Really?
So think of it as one organ meets up with another. So just think like your esophagus meets up with your stomach, right? And so that junction opens when it needs to be opened, when you're eating and contents have to go from your esophagus to your stomach, and otherwise it's closed. And it'll just do this natural motion of slowly opening and closing all day long, because you want everything continues to move whether we're using it or not. But obviously it's more open when we're eating. But what can happen is if we're stressed out, that motion of opening and closing becomes reversed. So it ends up being more open than it needs to be. Now everything in the stomach is coming up the esophagus. So now,
Refluxing.
exactly,
Yeah.
heartburn, indigestion, all of that. And I'm not saying that's the only reason, but that's an example. Yeah, so that junction or meet up from one organ to the next, those will quite often get confused and then move more often in the opposite direction than they should, just from stress.
And stress could be physical stress or emotional stress, mental stress. It could be
Absolutely.
any kind of stress.
Any of those.
So you could have an extraneous workout, physical, and something could get restricted, or you could be really stressed out about your job and family life or whatever, and that's doing the same thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yep. And that's also part of, and honestly, that should be part of any manual therapy, is calming down that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, so that the parasympathetic, that rest and relax, can kick back on.
I do notice that when I get a massage with you, that you focus on the nervous system first and calming everything down before you get into the real physical manipulation of massage. I find that interesting because a lot of massage therapists don't do that.
Yeah.
And I'll be 30 minutes, an hour into a massage and still wound up in my head. But with you, I'm falling asleep on the table because you've done what you needed to do to my nervous system and my mind before you started to manually massage. It's really interesting how that works.
Yeah, and that's wonderful that you noticed that, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often start most sessions just assessing the craniosacral system, right? That your brain, your spinal cord, the nerves, that central nervous system, because that's where everything is decided. So I need to be sure, ideally, if at all possible, and again, craniosacral therapy is a manual therapy, it's hands-on techniques. I want to see the speed and motility of that, because if that's a little bit off, I can do everything I want to possibly do in that time, but I'm only going to make minimal benefits for you, and they're going to be short-term. So I want to look to see what's going on with the central nervous system, get it calmed down, get it in parasympathetic, and then the body self-corrects. It's not my job to tell your body what to do and to force it to do something. I'm just trying to see where there's imbalances and then help it to self-correct. That's how we're alive. Our body continues to self-correct all day long.
All the time.
So that's not my place to come in and change that process. I'm just trying to guide it back to self-correction when it gets confused.
What blows my mind is the craniosacral part of the massage that you do. It's so gentle and it feels like it's just so subtle. I'm thinking, how in the world is she feeling anything? Because it's so gentle and it's so subtle. And the other day when you were in session with me, you had your hands at my head and you were just like, wow, your mind is all over the place. And yeah, I was having a stressful day. But how you knew that with what gentle pressure you had on around the base of my head, I could not believe that you were picking up on something, on me, really.
Yeah, so that goes back to, so with craniosacral therapy, I'm going to different bony landmarks or different bones, and I'm kind of sinking in and then stepping back, so to speak. I'm still staying in contact. It's a manual therapy, hands-on, but I'm just getting a feel for what direction your bones are moving in, because as the cerebrospinal fluid circulates through the brain and spinal cord, it radiates out. And it's subtle, obviously, because that's why the gentle touch is. I don't want to come in there and push down on it and stop it from moving.
But it amazes me.
I just want to see which way it is moving, and then is it moving correctly or is it moving too fast? And
it amazes me that you can even feel movement.
I'm not going to lie, visceral manipulation and craniosacral therapy, both of those modalities, my first day, first class, I sat there and thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to figure this out? This seems impossible. But thankfully, awesome instructors, it's spectacular modalities, so beneficial and healthy and safe. And again, practice, right? Practice. You just try and tune out the rest of the stuff going on with the body and focus on the system you're focusing on.
And you incorporate visceral manipulation into every massage that you do?
Depending on the client, but as long as I have their permission, at the very least, I'm going to see what's going on with those, I'll call them like sphincters, those junctions from one organ to the other. At the very least, I'm going to look to see if they're moving in the right direction with the client's permission. Because again, if it's something's moving in the wrong direction, it's going to create tension somewhere else in the body.
Yeah, and I will say that part of the massage does not take very long, so it's not like a big chunk of your time.
Absolutely not. It's a matter of a couple minutes, because just to go from one spot to the other, it's only going to take less than a minute just to sink in and to assess what direction it's moving in, and then we work out from there and see, well, what else is potentially going on with the body? Where is there other restrictions, so that everything can just self-correct, whether it's muscle tension, aches and pains, organs.
But I would imagine that if there's that much of a restriction going on for a length of time, that can actually cause some issues within that organ.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you're going to have some really hefty symptoms.
I agree, which is why, again, I think it's so important not to exclude these different systems of the body when you're trying to get down to the root cause of what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes even healthy things we do for ourselves can be getting in the way, right? It's tough. Life is a balancing act, and finding health and wellness for each of us, we're all different, and we all need different things at different times in our lives, so...
Yeah, for sure.
For sure, you have to be mindful of that.
How long have you been doing visceral manipulation?
About 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would imagine you're getting better and better.
It's amazing what you discover, absolutely, every single time. Yeah. Yeah, I had one client, I've seen her once or twice a month for about 3-4 years. So I know typically what her aches and pains are. Clearly, I know her health history and things along that line. And she came in last year. She said, I have no idea why, but my big toe has been killing me for 2 or 3 weeks now. And we were both like, oh, that's kind of odd, completely out of the ordinary for her. Nothing seemed to, again, going through the treatment, nothing seemed to really jump out and really speak much. So then I said, all right, well, let's take a look at your large intestine. The large intestine, the cecum, the beginning of your large intestine, is kind of tucked there at your right hip. And there's 3 ligaments that anchor that cecum, the beginning of the large intestine, in that hip. Well, if they get restricted, oddly enough, your big toe is one of the areas you could potentially end up with an ache or pain.
What?
So I freed up that cecum, which was definitely restricted in there. It was not moving well at all, naturally. She stood up, 10 minutes later, I didn't say anything to her about the big toe and what I was doing with the hip. I was just working on her hip, as far as she knew. She stood up and she said, "Oh my gosh, this is the first time in weeks my big toe has not hurt at all."
It's so incredible to me how something like that, you can have pain somewhere, but it's just radiating there from somewhere else. The problem is somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. And that's that whole connective tissue concept, right? One thing connects to another, and it just travels through connective tissue. No matter how subtle a pull or restriction or scar tissue is, it could potentially just travel and travel and travel and travel until it ends up somewhere that you would not have expected. That's why it's so important not to rule anything out. Look at everything holistically. Go through your checklist.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're a reincarnated medicine woman. I'm so fascinated with everything that you know, but I love the fact that you love to educate yourself. You're always studying, you're always improving. It's amazing to watch how you've changed just in the years that I've known you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. I love to learn. I don't know. I'm sure I'll never know everything. None of us will probably ever know everything. But if I could learn as much as I possibly can to be helpful for myself and clients and family and friends, love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's important for people, anybody listening to this that's had a chronic issue and doesn't really know why, maybe knee pain or ankle pain or shoulder pain, and can't explain why, like you haven't injured yourself. It's worth booking a massage with you to get some visceral manipulation and see what else is going on.
Yeah, I would love that, absolutely. And something else, and this is why it's so important, people complete their intake forms thoroughly. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will just kind of like wave their hand and brush it off. Oh, I've had 18 surgeries. I can't possibly list 18 surgeries. Well, now you're really just cheating yourself at trying to figure out how to help yourself feel better. Mm-hmm. Because if you will come off and you're already telling me you're not going to tell me everything, I have to be even more cautious. Because again, even though this is a safe modality and it's gentle, there are still things I have to be careful of. Mm-hmm. Whether it's visceral manipulation, craniosacral therapy, cupping, deep tissue, it doesn't matter. There are precautions to take depending on someone's health history. No matter how irrelevant it might seem to the client, it's important to be forthcoming and honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, they're cheating themselves, honestly. They're not going to get to that level of feeling better that they really want because they just don't want to have to write for 3 more minutes.
Right. That's the truth.
So,
well, you will be at our upcoming expo on May 10th. We're having kind of an open house event so the public can come in and experience a lot of different modalities. And at that expo, you'll be here to talk to people about visceral manipulation if they're interested to learn more and how you can help them. You'll also be doing some acupressure and essential oils, and you sell colloidal silver.
I will definitely be here the day of the expo for sure, and I look forward to meeting people and talking to them and answering their questions. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, tell everybody how to find you.
So you can either email me at dynamicmassage.kelly@gmail.com. You can go to my website, dynamicmassage.massagetherapy.com, and there's even a page on the website for available appointments. So you can see a listing of appointments that are available. You can't book online, but you can look at dates and times and then obviously reach out to me. And you can call or text 631-872-2420.
That's how I book with you. I go to your link and see what's available and then shoot you a text, and bada bing, it's super easy.
Yeah.
Super easy. Well, thank you so much for being with us and talking to us about visceral manipulation. It is a very unique modality, and you're the only person on the planet that I know that does it.
That's awesome. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff with you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on another enriching episode of Soul Wellness with Kristen. We hope the insights shared today have resonated with you, inspiring a deeper connection to your own journey towards holistic well-being. If you enjoyed today's episode, we invite you to subscribe, share, and reach out. Your feedback fuels our mission to bring you meaningful content that educates, empowers, and uplifts. Remember, You are a vital part of this community, and together we're creating a ripple effect of positive change.